Welcome back to another episode of Chad and Steve Have a Podcast. And this one I've really been looking forward to. In this episode, we're going to be talking with Matthias Wandel. We'll find out about those amazing machines he makes and how he's managed to create so many amazing viral videos from them. And we'll get into his thoughts on monetization and how he manages to make a living without taking on those annoying brand or sponsorship deals. And we'll find out how and why he got started on YouTube 13 years ago. Matthias Wandel has been producing content on YouTube since April 9, 2007, and he's been a huge source of inspiration for me, not just as a woodworker, but as a YouTuber. And actually, I'm going to guess that he probably wouldn't really describe himself as a YouTuber. Maybe, I don't know. But he's racked up, okay, get this, he's racked up almost 550 million video views, which I'm pretty sure makes his channel the most viewed woodworking show on YouTube. I'm pretty sure that's probably far and above any other woodworker maker channel. I'm not really sure. His videos are about woodworking, but with a more engineering bent. He's made everything from elaborate marble machines to the mouse mazes, I guess, mouse experiments. He likes to experiment with mice. Not only that, he's pretty much designed and built just about all of the power tools that he uses in his shop. I mean, I don't think that there's really any other woodworker on YouTube that comes close to his level of engineering and woodworking skills. But I think what fascinates me the most about Matthias is his unique approach to YouTube, and really that's what I want to get into today. So welcome to our podcast.
Yay, this is where we insert applause and some fireworks. Thank you for joining us, Matthias.
I think one of the things that fascinates me about you is that I kind of love that you've always kind of done the opposite of what YouTube recommends. I mean, you do a lot of what YouTube always says you should do, but you don't really ever have the flashy thumbnails. You don't have any kind of clickbait titles. You don't have any calls to action. I'm going to bet you've never asked anybody to like and subscribe to your channel. But also you've racked up like 1.7 million subscribers by just kind of doing it your own way. And I mean, but at the same time, I have this feeling that you're really keyed into the analytics and just know what works for your channel. And I really like that. And just tell us a little bit more about your approach to YouTube.
Well, I started out, actually, what may have contributed a lot to my early success is my first few videos on YouTube were not made for YouTube. So I had my website and started out with my marble machines, which were fairly popular just, back when viral meant HTML, not video. And I had audio samples in there. Well, a video sample would be even better. And so I was going to host this on my website, and I had to be conscious of how much bandwidth that's going to use up with my ISP, especially with the idea that wholesale bandwidth I had read at that point cost about $10 a gigabyte back in 2007, somewhere around thereabouts. And if this video goes viral and it gets downloaded off of this ISP and they're going to send me a bill for this bandwidth, that's going to get expensive. So I want videos of the marble machines to be about 30 seconds long. And that took a lot of very careful editing, which I wouldn't have done for YouTube because it's like, who cares how long it is? So I had these edits. I don't know if I actually ever did host them on there, but then when YouTube got bought for like $1.6 billion back in 2006 or 7, it's like, hey, I could just put them on there. And I didn't really care about anything else about YouTube. I just wanted to use them as sort of as a content distribution network. And those videos, they did well. And then I built my marble adding machine, which again wasn't for YouTube. And that one actually was one of my first viral hits that actually also involved a YouTube video where overnight it seemed to have gotten 80,000 views, which at the time was just unbelievable that something should get that many views in a day. So that was one of my first sort of viral hits, the marble adding machine, which was designed to go viral. And it actually did, because I figured that might be a popular sort of thing. But the marble machine videos, because they were edited so short, I think that sort of really struck, kind of hit the YouTube algorithm in just the right way. Because, at the time, remember, everybody's like, oh, I'm making a movie. Let's add credits to the end. I am the producer, the executive producer, the talent, the this, the that.
Yeah.
So it was just straight to the meat. And those, like, for a while, the Marble Machine videos were getting like 8,000 views a day. We're talking back in 2010, which YouTube was a lot smaller back then. So that was huge.
Yeah.
And if you were looking for any sort of Rube Goldberg contraption, like that would come up in the suggested videos. So that really gave me an early boost. And those Marble Machine videos, like nowadays, they're not getting very many views anymore, because YouTube, like what really works on YouTube has really changed. But they certainly gave me that initial sort of boost.
What did that look like as far as subscribers are concerned? Because this is really early on, and you weren't putting in calls for, subscribe or like the video. How long did it take to get 1,000 subscribers, or like how quickly were the milestones coming from you at this time, since you had so many views at that point?
I wasn't really paying that much attention to YouTube. Like YouTube was just supplemental to my website. So initially, most of my YouTube views came through my website. And then eventually the YouTube views exceeded the website views. And at that point I thought, okay, YouTube is a very useful discovery tool. YouTube is a useful tool for people to find my content so that they can then go to my website. Right. Because initially, I know at some point YouTube approached me. It's like, you can join our ad program. And I was like, that's ridiculous. It's like, everybody knows there's no money in YouTube, right? And then I read an article on the New York Times about the What the Buck show. This guy, was just talking about different, I don't know if you've ever heard of that. I haven't.
Michael Buckley, yeah.
And that he was making $100,000 a year off of that. And I'm like, what? It's like, okay, I should try this partner program.
Well, it's amazing that you knew, like, right out of the gate that I love that you were just like, I knew that they were going to be viral videos, or you had a really good thought. Like, what was it? Did you know that it was satisfying to watch Rube Goldberg machines or Marble Machines?
Oh,
or like,
the Marble
is it the
Machines
saddest? And also, did the music one work because there was the added like that, just that wonderful like sound to it, and it's just a satisfying thing for people to watch? Why do you think people watch the videos, I think, is the question I'm asking.
Yeah, so of course viral is, I always sort of think of, there's viral, which is, everybody links to it and it gets this huge spike and then settles down to a much lower level of views. But the Marble Machines, they never actually went viral. And people call it viral when something gets a lot of views, but it was just, they hit the YouTube algorithm in the right kind of way. There wasn't other people talking about the Marble Machine. They just kept getting recommended like thousands of times a day. But there are other things where the marble adding machine, I figured, would be something that would do well, and it did. There's a few, like back in 2007, 2008, where you had a sense that something would do well and you'd have a fair chance of hitting it, because there wasn't quite as much stuff to compete against.
Right.
Nowadays, it's like, I'm going to make a viral video. It's like, forget it. But back in the early days, like if you had a sufficiently interesting topic, it had a good chance of succeeding. And you remember there was like this whole thing about marketing agencies making viral videos. That was the thing. You don't hear about that so much nowadays. I mean, I'm sure they still try, but it's just the standards of what should go viral. Like, people have become so jaded that it's very hard to hit that sort of spot where something goes viral.
I remember talking to you a few years ago, and you were, you had some thoughts on trying to create viral videos. And it's like, yeah, anytime you try to create that, it just, the things you think are going to work, it just doesn't always hit. I think it's really difficult, but somehow you've managed to, I would say you've had a big string of viral videos. I think probably more than any other maker or woodworking video, definitely.
One of my ex-coworkers sort of said, it's like, you get your 15 minutes of fame way too often.
Every few years you get an extra 15 minutes. Yeah. How do you pivot from doing that? So now you have something that works. How do you not get locked into doing that over and over and over again? How did you, like, oh, now I want to do something else? I was looking at your channel and you upload family games nights videos, and here's me clearing the snow, and here's me
Oh,
repairing a
that's
bridge. And you have a wonderful, just like it's just an outlet. You just throw stuff out there, and it almost seemed like you didn't get too wrapped up in, hey, this is what works, so I'm going
well,
to
that
keep
was
doing that.
early on, certainly, and especially my second channel. That was just about various random stuff. I sort of turned it into more of a public channel later. Yeah, so a lot of these videos weren't really, it's sort of like Steve's early roller coaster videos. It wasn't about trying to hit something that way.
What is you mentioned the importance of your website, and I know that that's always kind of been your key, and you write extensive articles about every video that you post. As far as I know, every single video has an article that goes with it. Is that right?
Not anymore.
Oh, you don't do that anymore, just for like the
Yeah,
major projects or something, I
yeah,
presume.
yeah.
But it's so funny because you never really, you don't do the YouTube-y stuff. You don't tell people to like, hey, go to my website. You don't have those calls to action, which I find really fascinating that your channel is so big and you get so many views. And even like, I guess the name is Wood Gears. I don't think I've ever heard you say Wood Gears on YouTube. Is
I
that,
think I've said it a few times
have you? I'm sure you
early on. Early on, I would actually mention that sort of thing, but yeah, but not so much lately. Hang on, I gotta plug in an extra heater here. It's cool in this room.
This
No
is
problem.
up in way out there in Canada.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we're both in Canada. I realize we're just outside Toronto. I think you're just outside Toronto too, right, Matthias?
No, I'm in the Atlantic provinces at this point.
Oh, you moved a few years ago, didn't you? Didn't you used to be in
Years ago, yeah.
Waterloo?
I started out in Waterloo. And then in 2007, I moved to Ottawa. So I started a YouTube thing when I still lived in Waterloo, like my first few videos, but I didn't really start taking YouTube more seriously until about 2010 in Ottawa. And then we moved to a rural place outside of Ottawa in 2017, and then in 2018 we moved to New Brunswick.
Oh wow!
And your first video is you just sliding around on the ice, right?
That's right.
Oh yeah.
And I noticed that because it's like it's like my favorite thing to do is to go back and look at everybody's very first video. It's not so fun anymore when channels are kind of start out of the gate, knowing what they're going to do. But I love looking at old channels and seeing. And I looked, and you posted that video on the exact same day that you joined YouTube. So what was the? You're like, I have just got to post this video of me sliding on the ice. Nothing's going to stop me.
It was actually my sister's skate. Yeah, like the
Oh.
road was so iced over that you could skate over it. I thought that was just kind of cool. Now it turns out I looked for that sort of thing recently. There's various other videos of people skating on ice on the road. It's not the only one, and that one is like, gosh, it's like 15 frames per second, 320 by 240.
That's great.
I know your history. You came from RIM. You worked at Research in Motion for quite a few years, right? And very early on. I think you started in the early 90s, I believe.
Yeah, it's just getting now to the point that I've left RIM for as long as I was working there.
Oh, well, congratulations on that milestone. When you left RIM, did that kind of fall in line with when you started doing kind of what you're doing now full time, or did you move on to something else? And this has always been.
I had something else lined up. So I had another job lined up, and I actually lined it up months in advance. And then, as the time came near for my end date at RIM came near, it's like, well, things are kind of slow. I emailed him again. It's like, well, things are kind of slow for us now. I was like, that's fine. Actually, I've got some other projects of my own that I want to pursue. One of which was put a little bit more content on woodgears.ca, which I had just registered a domain actually maybe a month or two before I left work. And I was like trying to think of a domain. I was at work, and it's like, everything I typed in is like, yeah, something's already there. Yeah, taken. Like, woodgears.ca. So I just typed in woodgears.ca into the browser. It's like, no domain. It's like, excellent. Registered it.
Yeah, your website.
.com was taken though, but I figured it was like to end it with .ca. Like, I don't know. Maybe I should have. Certainly, woodgears.com has made probably a few $1,000s over the years off of me by just domain squatting.
Just like residual. Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah, and I think at some point I talked to and he wanted, I don't know, maybe something like $10,000 for it. And I'm like, no, this is not going to pay for itself. Like, it's not going to, and of course it's become less and less important because people navigate less and less by typing a URL to the browser these days. So
Yeah. Let me ask you about that, about earning an income on YouTube, because basically, as for a long time, and I know you've been monetizing some of your videos with AdSense, at least maybe the older ones. I think you've gone back and doing that. But
yeah, I started out with just old ones.
I remember you were real reluctant to using AdSense, and so your videos were never monetized that way. You you still don't take on any kind of branded sponsorship deals. I know you experimented with it and didn't have very good results with that.
There's an interesting DeWalt story that I would like to ask, but we'll get to that.
I don't think you do Patreon or any of these other, crowdfunding things. So your sources of income mostly are from your sales of plans, aren't they, on your website?
And YouTube ads, just the regular YouTube, Google ads kind of thing.
Oh, right.
Yeah, and so the business model started out as just AdSense, which back in 2007 was still big. Like that was kind of, I was talking with because I'd started the website maybe a month before I left Research in Motion, and somebody was saying that's like a get rich quick scheme, and they're like, yeah. And I typed in get rich quick into Google, and sure enough, the still came up for AdSense. It was not, well, I guess it wasn't part as effective as get rich quick schemes, but certainly their AdSense was kind of a thing that I know one guy who makes his living online who started out by, again, made a website just for AdSense. So the original thing was to make money off of AdSense, and I started with a personal website off of just my internet provider had a web space for me back when internet providers had that sort of thing. So I put up a few pages and it did fairly well. And then I put some ads on there, and very quickly I had a tweak. So I got about $5 a day out of that. So that was like exciting. It's like, wow, money from nothing. And so I was like, let's expand that out a little bit. I'm sure I can take it to $20 a day. And so I registered the domain and started creating some more articles about that. This is pre-video. Like, even though I had the YouTube thing, it was not about making build videos. YouTube was all about cats falling off the TV. America's Funniest Home Video type of stuff.
Yeah.
So it was AdSense, and then some of my projects. I kept getting emails for, I'd like to buy plans for this. And I mean, to me, I wouldn't be somebody who would necessarily buy plans if I find something interesting. I just kind of re-engineer it and build it myself. But enough people ask for plans. It's like, okay, I should learn some CAD. And so I learned SketchUp because that was kind of the de facto choice at the time, and put together some plans, and they sold fairly well. And within a year of my first plans, I think the AdSense, the plans were doing better than the AdSense. And the plans have, for the most part, been, unless like when the most videos went crazy, those outdid the AdSense, the plan sales. But sales have been declining. Like going back to, let's say, 2010, 2011, there wasn't a whole lot of ways to monetize that sort of stuff. Really, there was not a lot of way to monetize YouTube videos other than, like, there wasn't Skillshare and mattress people and razor people knocking down your door to do a spot for them. And there was no Patreon, and selling plans took some infrastructure, I guess. Mm-hmm. We had hacked together some really primitive store. I wasn't using anybody else's store, but even selling e-goods, I remember I was looking at Shopify at the time, and they didn't have anything that met my needs. I'm sure they do now. I just haven't looked at them lately. So so it started out with AdSense, and then pivoted to plan sales, and then the YouTube ads added to that. So it's those three things really. And probably if I had more energy to put into that sort of thing, I think getting into the courses type of thing. Mm-hmm. Like the Wood Whisperer got into that. He was the first to, he's totally pivoted to that. And like Jesse, whatever, the Samurai Carpenter guy with his Maker's Mob, right. And you with your
Woodworker.
Yeah, so I think that would be the next logical thing to pivot to. But
I think that the main thing is to just uh, find a problem that you can, provide the solution to. Rather, I mean, at least that worked in my case. Was that there was just this need for people who wanted to get started, and it's like, oh, okay, I can provide that for you. And here it is. But I think you have an interesting approach to that. And do you monetize your actual videos on YouTube when you release them, or not?
I started that about 2.5 years ago, yeah, because sales are not what, like, sales have definitely peaked out and they're on the decline for the past 2 years, pandemic notwithstanding. Um, so yeah, it used to be all about, monetizing it by selling stuff on my website, but there's so many plans and such that you can buy now. Like when I started that, there wasn't that many people selling plans, so now it's just the audience has become so diluted, so to say. The growth of content has been much faster than the growth of audience lately, because I think even 10 years ago, probably most people who would be inclined to go on YouTube, most of them were already on it. But the amount of content has exploded since then, so it's just sort of spread much further apart.
Do you watch a lot of YouTube yourself?
Yes.
Yeah. What do you watch? Like what channels are you watching right now?
Like one of my favorite new ones is Stuff Made Here. I think you guys talked about him.
Oh yeah.
He's like, yeah, it's like this is a new generation of YouTubers. Like when we got into it, we weren't, our advantage was being early.
Right.
We don't necessarily have the natural talent for it. And and all of the early successes were sort of accidental in a way. And now you got stuff like this Stuff Made Here guy. I don't remember his name. Like he figured out what works. He didn't have this long period of experimenting online to kind of learn it. He just, and even like actually when John Heist got into it, ibuildit.ca, like he got into it inspired by me. And this was back, I think, in 2011. And I thought it was already too late at the time. But again, he quite deliberately shot for making a living at it, and he succeeded at it. So it's a different sort of generation. And I think now the guys that are successful are putting a lot of effort into it, being serious about it right from the get-go, and have natural talent at it, which I don't necessarily see myself as somebody who's got really natural talent at the presenting part of it.
How do you think that the whole like maker, I know I'm kind of reluctant to use the word maker, even though it's been around a while, but I'll say maker / woodworking. I kind of go with that. But how do you think that that's changed over the past, well, even 5 to 10 years, really? I've seen, such a change in these, but how do you see this whole kind of genre as changing? And I know you and I kind of talked a little bit about this whole idea of like, to get into this now, these guys are coming on throwing a lot of money at this stuff, and
the projects are extreme, massive, huge scale projects,
huge workshops, and it just seems like it's kind of, do you think that it's ever going to, do you think that the ship has passed for guys like, you and me, who just kind of came out here and we're just being ourselves, and hey, we're just putting out videos? Or those, I mean, I guess people will always be making those kind of videos, but are they ever really going to get any more traction?
Yeah, I think I don't think I can't see myself getting into it now.
Yeah.
Because I would have to invest so much in equipment and learning and whatnot to just even have a fair shot at it, that I don't think I would. I mean, I might make some videos just to share with friends, but it does take more effort to make really good ones. So I have a hard time imagining that I would get into it now, with it being such a competitive landscape that it has become.
Oh, it's hugely competitive. I mean, the number of woodwork, for a long time, I was usually, every time a new woodworking channel would come around, I would subscribe. Now it's just, there's thousands. I can't keep up with them. And
yeah, I used to keep a list on my website. Now it's like, and that list was complete, as far as mostly complete, for the stuff that I thought was worth watching. But now it's like, you can't keep up with it.
I think it's interesting to see how a lot of these channels, even the ones that the newer kind of maker channels who they do some woodworking, and how their trajectory has just always sailed past me or anything as far as like subscriber numbers. You look at, they'll have maybe 4 million subscribers or something, but I look at their view counts and they're like half of what you've got. I mean, so it really kind of, it just begs the question, what's the more important metric here? I don't know.
And
Yeah, this is like subscriber count is kind of a funny metric. I think it might have been Make Magazine, when Make Magazine was still a thing. And I think it was them. They're like, would you make videos for it? We've got 4 million subscribers. And the problem is they posted so much stuff that only people who don't regularly watch subscribed videos would remain subscribed.
Right.
Like there would be the occasional Jimmy DeResta would occasionally make a video for them, which I'd watch, but I couldn't subscribe to their channel because it's like drinking from the fire hose. So the only people that were subscribed to Make Magazine's channel were people who don't keep up with their subscriptions. So they would put out, some of their videos would get like with 4 million subscribers, some of their videos would get like, I don't know, 10,000 views, maybe even 4,000. Like incredibly low numbers given the subscribers. It's like, yeah, it's like, I think I should sort of reply, like, well, given your subscriber numbers, your engagement is remarkably low.
how do you see the channel growing in the next couple of years? What do you want to do? Is there anything that you want to challenge yourself to do differently, or is there something new you want to try, or are you still fine with it just being that outlet that it needs to be for you?
I see it just declining over the next few years.
Probably a realistic expectation for a lot of us.
Very much so.
Like there's just so much stuff out there, and plus, now with young kids, you'll hit that soon, Chad.
Yes.
I just don't have the same amount of energy. So I'm very grateful that I have a job that I can still make a living off, that I can do essentially part-time, and do on my own time. So I'm grateful that it's still working. But I mean, when you look at the amount that other people invest for much lower view counts, I'm just like, it doesn't make sense for me. It's like I bought a new PC early this year, but I was kind of like, why should I? It's like, is it going to pay for itself?
Yeah, I can't help if someday it's just like this kind of bubble might just crash. There's a lot of people are investing a lot of money on brand new YouTube channels, and I mean, and I can really only speak for the woodworking genre, is that they're spending a lot of money on tools in their shops, and I can't imagine with this level of competition how. I mean, I guess there's going to be those few that rise to the top, but I also kind of think that the ones that are starting to gain the most traction, sadly, are the ones who are looking a lot like TV.
Yeah, it is becoming, especially with the push for the mid-roll ads when they automatically roll those out. It's like, it's another thing that makes it more like TV. Oh yeah, let's just interrupt people with ads more and more and more.
Right.
And that's why I made this video, just use an ad blocker, because I'm just like, yeah, I make money off of this, and I'm going to shoot myself in the foot, but it's like, this is ridiculous.
So what was the main reason behind not having ads in the first place? Like when you said 2.5 years ago, you decided to switch them on, I'm sure you must have been hundreds of millions of views in at that point. What was the thought, like, it takes away from what I'm trying to do, this isn't why I'm doing it? Or was it just, I don't need the money, like, I'm not going to.
It was, I don't want to spam my regular followers with these god-awful ads because they're just so annoying. But I did have, so I might have been 2010 or 11 that I started turning on ads, but only on the older content that just kind of gets mostly fed by YouTube suggests. So it's like, if they click on it because they're looking for some Rube Goldberg thing and they're watching my marble machine, well, it's like, I don't really feel a particular responsibility to somebody who just sort of comes along randomly through the YouTube algorithm and is watching my marble machine and then they'll be gone.
Right.
I don't mind spamming those people with ads, but the people that really love my stuff, and some of those people buy plans, so I just didn't want to spam my regular. So my principle had been both in terms of, because I started this out with the AdSense, with like the web ads, the ads that you put in web pages, which
the old school ones. Yeah.
So when it fell off the front page of my website, which usually would take about a month to No, you a month and a bit before it fell off the front page. And once it fell off the front page, then it put ads on the page. And so
Right.
I just did the YouTube thing the same way. I would, unless it was for something that I was already monetizing with plans. Once it fell off the front page of my website, so about that after that time, then I'd enable the ads.
Fair enough.
And most of the views came from older content that back then. Like YouTube has really changed that way in that.
Do you find that now? Because one of the things that we found at Clean My Space, that 70% of our views on a daily basis come from archive content from more than 5 years ago. It's just like those big staple pieces of content, which YouTube now has a really good way of being able to bring into the recommendation kind of system that they have now. They're doing a very good job. Sorry, I cut you off though.
And it used to be easier to get into that, like, because your videos are evergreen kind of videos too. And it used to be all about the evergreen type of stuff. I was optimizing for evergreen, not for personality kind of thing or TV show like thing. But I found like in the last 5 years, it's been much, much harder to get anything that kind of hits that evergreen status. Yeah. So the archive stuff that does well is mostly stuff that's like 3 years or older. Right. So now it's, and this is sort of an interesting in terms of the maker space, like Evan and Caitlin, I don't know if you've ever watched any of their videos.
Sure.
They're not really experts at maker, and they kind of realize that, we shouldn't be teach. So it's, it's all about, hey, look at us, we're so cute, and look at all the fun we're having. Yeah. And I thought that will not succeed, but they've, I was like, that's not where it is. That's not where it's at, I thought, but they're doing okay. They're doing well.
It's highly polished, very polished. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's not about none of the stuff that they create is designed to be evergreen. It's more about, look at us having fun trying to make stuff and screw up a little bit.
Yeah.
Which, is sort of, you watch it because you follow them, not because you want to learn about how to do this or that.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of the, even evergreen content, it's getting weird how, I look at the analytics for, say, the recent video I had where I just made these little wooden snowflakes, and it's like all of those views come from YouTube's features. There's like, the search is like 2% of the people search for that, and you see people are still trying to keyword stuff, and you see these really convoluted titles of their videos, and none of that really is important anymore at all.
Yeah, it's funny, like when you upload a video, it used to be the keywords thing was right there, and now it's like
a formality.
You have to click an extra
it's hidden under a tab now. Yeah, it used to be first and foremost.
It used to be, and I think this is the way the web has gone too. Like back in the days when people were using Alta Vista, before Google, they would look at the keywords, and I was looking at the source for a website, and one of the keywords said, quote, better than sex, which was not at all what the website was about. Yeah. And so I went to Alta Vista and typed in better than sex, and sure enough, that
comes up.
But I think Google has realized, there's much emphasis on meta tags nowadays, because anything that isn't shown on the website, you can put any crap you want on there, and and that means it's untrustworthy, and that means I think YouTube, like Google now, just kind of mostly ignores your meta information, because what really matters is what you show to the customer, or show to the audience, not what you claim it's about. And so I suspect those keywords are much less important than they used to be. Perhaps they're even ignored now.
Do you pay close attention to your analytics? Are you an analytics guy? It seems like you are. So I was watching one of your videos. It was from, I think you have a channel called Matthias Talks YouTube or something like that, where you literally talk about kind of just this stuff that we talk about on this podcast. I wanted to ask you this. Where do you keep your subscriber plaque? Where do you keep your 1 million subscriber plaque?
Oh, I never requested one.
What's that?
I never requested it.
That is so awesome. That's like so metal. That is
so the name. That is the name of this the title of this podcast is Why Has Matthias Not Requested His Million? So I love it. I love that. That is awesome. I take it you didn't do it for the 100K plaque either?
No. Yeah, well, I couldn't have gotten that one, because I think by the time they introduced that, I was already, maybe I wasn't over 1 million. I don't know. It would have been silly to get the 100K one, but it's like, I wouldn't put it in the background of a video. I don't hang certificates or that sort of stuff on the wall. It's like, it's another thing.
Fair enough.
That you keep in a drawer. It's like, I guess, it could be, say, 20 years from now, when YouTube is a thing of the past, it could be a cool memento to show, look, I got this.
That is so funny. That is, yeah, I can't imagine you with that plaque on your shop wall.
You have 1.6 million subscribers. How would you describe your audience? What does your audience look like? I went through and I checked your comments, and you have such an interesting, like, people, your audience, or at least the people who have the most popular comments on a lot of your videos, have this wonderful, they put you on this wonderful platform, and they speak in your voice. It's like, Matthias would do this and da 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 da.
Oh, yeah.
So how would you describe your audience, and what is your relationship with those however many people who continually watch your videos on a regular basis?
And if I could jump in real quick, you do have a little bit of a reputation of being a little abrasive to some of your some of the people comment.
Oh yeah, and sometimes you get the occasional email. It's like, it's like, you should really, it would be much better business. You can't treat your customers that way, and blah 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 blah. And it's like, well, if I had to put up with that kind of shit, I wouldn't be doing it anymore.
You know what we need to do is we got to just create controversy. That's the thing that's, and we did that for a while. Well, we didn't do it intentionally, but people thought, remember when people thought you and I were having like this feud over like pocket screws versus, and people kind of just in the comments built up this thing that it was like, oh, well, Steve's doing it this way. Oh, Matthias is going to hate that. Or it was just a really weird thing, but it was probably good for views. I don't know.
Can we drag this out on the podcast? Can you guys start arguing about pocket screws?
It was such a nothing thing, but they just, it became like this audience thing that they kind of loved it.
Yeah, well, there's been much more of that with John Heiss. It's easier to get into that sort of relationship with John Heiss. Mm-hmm. And we've always had a bit of there's a bit of rivalry there. And like one time I visited him, and we were just talking trash for the whole time, and we shot like, it must have been 9 videos in the space of 3 hours in his shop, because I brought some of my stuff and we're comparing it and whatnot and trash talking each other. And then we did the channel together, which I later renamed Matthias Talks YouTube, because it was meant to be about sort of woodworking rivalry, but it ended up being all the videos were about YouTube. And John, then he wasn't so happy that it seemed that there was people rooting for him and not for me and not for him. So he felt like, there's too many Matthias people that don't like me. And so he kind of got out of this, and then I managed to jab him. The rivalry continued for a little bit after that, because I managed to jab him just by comments I made, and he sort of had a rebuttal on his channel.
That's funny. We kind of played into it a little bit. We did an April Fool's video a long time ago. It must have been like 2012, maybe.
That's the video you shared with me, right, Steve?
Right. And we each made a die, a 6-sided die, and the idea was we would like send it through the monitor to each other, and it was kind of corny. It was kind of it was fun to make that, but the whole idea was like, oh, Matthias is going to do the overcomplicated version, and I'm going to not do that, but really, and I think this is what people don't know about Matthias, is that he doesn't overcomplicate things. In fact, I always see you finding amazingly simple solutions to problems that I always wish I could be that good at. Like, something's not working right, and I would think, oh, how am I going to fix this, and and you're like, all I need is just like a little wedge, and I'll just wedge it in there, and it'll be fine. Those are the kind of things that I think people don't really understand.
And from a fresh eye perspective, I'm a big fan of Jimmy DiResta, and I always watch his video more aspirationally. It's like, I'm really interested in seeing the way he does things, as opposed to necessarily seeing what the end product is. I just like the process, quite like Steve is getting at. So do you find your audience is aspirational or inspirational? Actually, do you feel like the majority are inspired to try what you're doing, or do you find that you just get a lot of people that just love watching what would Matthias do in this situation, or like watching the way that, because one of the things that really interested me, and it's the name of your website, Wood Gears. I didn't realize how many wood gears you had incorporated into your you had I'm sorry, I'm certainly not a woodworker, but you had a box and it was designed to cut. Yes. And you had the gears and you spin it. And I'd never seen something like that. And when I was I've watched a lot of woodworking content. And I was like, I can see why people are watching this, because it's like I'm watching him just work as an artist or as a woodworker or whatever. But do you find that people like, I know you sell the plans and whatnot, is that the majority of the audience, or do you think the majority of the audience is watching you and being like, wow, this dude really, he puts together some amazing stuff?
Well, the armchair folks are always going to outnumber the doers.
True.
But of course, the doers matter much more. The armchair folks are never going to buy a plan. So, I mean, there's both. So there is, because like, do you want to show people exactly how to do stuff? And that's where Steve is getting more into that. Or do you want to do something that's spectacular, that has more chance of just being satisfying to watch?
Right.
So you kind of hit both of those.
Do you deliberately do that when you're making the like, are you like, I want to do this in a way, or do you just push yourself to do what you want and you're literally just recording the process? You come across as someone who just sets up a camera and it's like, I'm doing what I'm doing, and you don't seem to think much about like how this is going to come across. Is that the way it works for your process?
The camera does get moved an awful lot, and there is a lot of editing. So many people like, what's your full-time job? What do you do? What's your day job? I think a lot. So before I start a project, a lot of times I think it through in terms of how I'm going to do this, and then there's also the thought of how it presents. And as I'm shooting, many times I'm kind of in my head already editing the video, where it's like, oh wait, I need a transition from here to here. So sometimes like, oh, let me put that box back and set up the camera, and then I'll rotate the box and put it there, so that people kind of get a sense of, okay, now I'm working on this other part of it. So I'm kind of already putting the video together in my head as I'm shooting it. And before I shoot, a lot of times I think it's like, what's the best way of doing this? So a lot of these clever sort of things on the spot were actually something I thought of days in advance.
Right. I see.
And then, if I'm shooting a video too, then I want to have it sort of thought through. Whereas if I'm not shooting a video, something I'll just kind of bumble along. So it makes it like if I've only got an hour, it's fine to just putter away to do something that is just something for the house. But if I'm shooting a video, then I think about continuity. So one of my principles, and I know I'm different from a lot of people that way, is like before I go back in the shop, I edit what I've got shot.
Right.
So even sometimes if I take lunch, if I'm working in the morning and in the afternoon, which is rare. It's like I'll go through the clips and I'll decide which ones to keep, just sort of like to have in my mind in the space of, okay, this is where I left off. Or then I may shoot one day in the afternoon, and then kids are home and I don't get anything done anymore. And then the next day I'll go through and edit what I've got, and then I'm kind of in a frame of mind of, okay, this is where I left off, so that in the video there isn't any sort of continuity break.
I do the same thing. I'll even make sure that I wear the same shirt or something,
Comb your hair the same way.
Sometimes that shirt gets worn an awful lot.
It pays to have multiple versions of the same shirt.
But you have actually crafted a brand for yourself, even though I know you wouldn't call it that, but because you fit into a kind of a space of your own as far as woodworking goes. You don't have, your shop doesn't look like the woodworking shop people expect to see. You don't dress like every woodworker on YouTube. Your demeanor is straightforward. You get right into it. All of this stuff just works. And I think that there's a lot of people who could learn so much about how you approach making a video from the very first second. And this is one of the things YouTube does recommend, is getting right to the point. But you've always done that. You're like, it almost sometimes feel like you're starting in mid-sentence when you start your video. It's like, bam, you're just right there.
I love it. You're thrown right in, and before you know it, the video is over, and you're like, well, I guess I just watched 100% of the video without even thinking, because you don't throw stop words at the end. You don't like, well, that's the project, guys, and if you want to subscribe and get my plans and do that, you cut all of that out, and it just, the video screen goes black, and it's like, I guess I just watched the entire
You got to
video.
tell people to smash.
Mini survey. Have you guys ever hit that like button or subscribe button because somebody told you to?
No.
No.
It's a waste of time. It's a total waste of time.
But we've mentioned it in every single one of our 750 videos. I don't know if it worked. Perhaps it didn't. Perhaps people would have subscribed regardless.
It
But
only
yeah,
works
it
if
is.
you tell them to smash the like button. It has to be
It's
smashed.
it's so different. It makes your videos so different, and it makes the subscriber number and clearly the view number like so substantial. And I watched one of your other, and I was going to get at this earlier. I'll finish off this point. I was watching one of your videos where you actually showed a screen, or you turned the camera around and you showed your screen, and you had some video retention, audience retention numbers on. You were trying to prove a point about why one of your videos didn't do well or not, and you brought up the video that quote unquote didn't do well, and you had a 78% retention rate on it, and you're like, I don't know what. And my jaw just dropped because we average like 33% on a good day, or 40%.
Oh, that must have been the
day.
78 retention at the beginning of the video. It could have been.
It could have very well been. But what I did want to get at is, because you do pay attention to these analytics, do you actually see? Do you have a meaty kind of retention for your audience? Do you manage to keep them around because you don't put in stop words, because you don't ask for comment questions and all of the rest?
Maybe. I mean, I always find it interesting on rare occasions when other people show some of their analytics, because of course I don't know what other people's is. Way back, the Marble Machine videos, like they had audience retention like at the max all the way through.
Yeah.
Not anymore. And my audience retention isn't that great anymore, but it could be just, I think a lot of times it's like there's just so much stuff on there. It's like you go on YouTube and there's like 5 new videos that you want to watch, and before you even finish that one, you're already thinking about watching the next one.
Right.
So the audience retention is less than it used to be. And yeah, I watched a lot of videos, even Jimmy DeResta's videos, which are very sped up. I watched them with my index finger on the cursor right key.
Yeah.
And I keep tapping that, and every once in a while I was like, oh, that was interesting. Stop cursor left a couple of times to see what I missed.
It's kind of like how we've grown to just watch YouTube videos, isn't it? You just kind of, you scrub through so much of
There's
them.
a setting where you can just watch the whole video. Melissa watches videos at like 1.5 speed, just so it's like, hey, it's a 7-minute video, but now I can watch the whole video, and especially when it's at the cadence of what a normal YouTube video is. It's like, hey guys, how you doing? Welcome back to my. It's like that at 1.5 speed is a lot better, because that's a huge time savings. But that is just like the norm for watching things now. The norm is to scrub through a 3-hour episode of the Joe Rogan podcast, not sit and listen to the whole thing.
Yeah, well, sometimes I've listened to long stretches of that, but yeah, I used to speed up more. Now I'm just tap more. Especially like on an iPad, it's kind of hard to hit that sort of, it's not as quick to select that sort of speed up type of thing. And then if somebody's talking at 1.5 times, you really have to pay attention to get what they're saying. So now I just tap, which is basically speeds it up even more, because I'm jumping ahead 5 seconds at a time. Because if you miss 5 seconds of something, you usually get a sense of what, he's cutting that on the table side. Yeah. I don't really need to see the piece go through all the way. It's like, especially maker type videos, it's like I'm familiar with, I'm mostly kind of, essentially scrub through them to see, it's like, is he like, sometimes like, oh, that's interesting, I wonder how he joined this and that. That's tricky. So I'll scrub through until I get to that point, and then I'll play that at regular speed, a few key bits. But yeah, I tend to, most of the maker videos, I tend to skip through pretty fast, and I think a lot of audience does that nowadays, because my audience retention, I think, is lower than it used to be. And I've also found the audience retention drops over time. So you've got the first day's audience retention is going to be better than what you'll get like after a week. Because you've got the people that actually follow you that watch it initially, and they actually want to see your video. And later on is people that stumble across it from the algorithm, and maybe they're just trying to get at some piece of content, or in a little bit less into what you're doing.
I think that we've talked about this briefly, I think your thumbnails are actually brilliant, even though they look like zero effort went into them. They look like, and it's basically, I'm sure you put a lot of effort into kind of like figuring out what exact moment you want to have in there, but you don't have like any posed photo of yourself next to a finished product. You don't have like text all over the thumbnail. It mainly shows an action, something happening, and they're very intriguing. And I think that it says a lot about the way you kind of approach YouTube.
Unlike you, Steve, I don't have a background in graphic design. So,
So it was
just
utilitarian.
yeah.
How many
So I
variations
have
do you go through on a thumbnail though? Like when you
I
release a
have
video, how many are you like, I have 3 and I don't know which one? Or do you just like, this is the one?
uh, I sometimes I pick out a few frames from the video. Usually, because a lot of times I have an article with it, I just go scroll through the article and say which of the photos that I picked out for the article would be the best thumbnail. And then that doesn't necessarily mean I use that photo. I might grab a separate frame from the video then for that. Like, yeah, what scene do you grab the thumbnail of? So it's like my goal is not necessarily to show the finished product but to show the process and to make it in a way intriguing, so it is in some ways clickbaity in that it's intriguing.
Yeah, I think that the
So
thumbnail could be way more clickbaity than the title, and people will like it actually. If you're just showing that moment of what's happening here.
What is this moment? Yeah.
yeah. So and then like the one I was doing the one about the router table with the built-in dust collection. And I had a thumbnail picked out and then I uploaded it, and it suggested just a picture of the blower for the thumbnails. And I'm going, yeah, you know what? Somehow building a blower always does well. And I'll just go with a picture of the blower. So first I just picked the thumbnail they suggested, and then later on I went through the video and found a slightly more optimized version of that and boosted the contrast and all that. Like if it's a small picture, it helps to like really boost the contrast, I think. So that, it's okay to blow out the highlights because it's just a thumbnail. Like, so I tend to boost the contrast of the thumbnails a fair bit. And then oftentimes take a section, not the whole frame, like just to show sort of the interesting crop of that. So the blower, and that did do fairly well.
Do you
Somehow,
ever
yeah,
use?
building a blower is just something that people are fascinated with.
I see that. Like, I mean, it literally is double the views of just a regular video, and it's just a picture of your blower. I mean, it's a patent Matthias blower. I see. Like, I've seen you build this several times, and I saw that. I watched that video, and you walked around your shop and showed the 18 other ones that you had bought that are attached to various machines. You know what? I did want to ask. You made a Wasp. Did you turn one of those into a Wasp sucking machine?
I remember that.
2 questions.
Oh, yeah.
We're both in Canada, so do you have it available? Can I come over and get it? Would you sell it to me? Something? Because that looked amazing.
Oh, like all of my Wasp sucking machines have been dismantled. Yeah, so I started out. I had a viral pre-web hit of my Wasp sucking machine back in maybe 1995, 96. So a web page, pre-video, which was a blower that I hadn't built, and I just built a box to catch the wasps into, and I used that at my house, and it was fairly effective. And then I took the box full of wasps detached from the blower, and I brought that into work, like into the office, like, look.
That's funny.
And then I shot. So then next wasp sucking machine. This was at. It was actually, there's guys filming for a TV show. Like I was on a TV show. This is back in 2011, I think, going way back, early days of YouTube. I noticed there's this barrel in my backyard that had been there since I bought the house, and there was wasps coming out of it. It's like, oh, okay, this is my chance to. So I built the wasp sucking machine. Like I built the box again because I didn't keep the previous box. And that was the video that did best of all the videos I shot that year. And then the one that's done really well. So I was out at the rural property I had at the time, and there's this crappy chicken coop, which is also the one that I shot the most videos in. So that chicken coop was that crappy old chicken coop, that was a moneymaker. I made more money in that chicken coop than anywhere else on that property.
You never know.
There's money in that chicken coop.
I walked in there and I got stung. And I hadn't even brought my filming camera. I hadn't brought my regular filming camera with me because I wasn't planning on doing any filming, just the camera that I used to film with. And I was like, I'm gonna get him. And like the shot was in pieces because I was painting it, but I was like, you gotta do it while the moment is, when you're in the mood, I was like, that's just I'm gonna get him. So I shot it with my old camera. And I had this blower that I just built as an experiment. I had to have that there, and some dryer hose. And so I built a box with a screen that's just to capture the wasps in. And I ran it, and that dryer hose is sort of the aluminum metal kind of metallized. It made the satisfying sound.
The most satisfying sound ever. Did you actually think about just taking that, like just filming that and doing like a 5-minute video just of the sound of the wasp being sucked down that? That's the part that got me. I was like, I need that sound in my life.
Yeah. It was certainly very satisfying. I did end up getting stung one more time, actually, because it turns out the screen, I used hardware cloth for the screen, 2 layers of it, kind of figured that would be fine enough for them. But it turns out some of the wasps got through there. And I reached into the blower outlet just to get a sense of how much air was coming out. And the wasp came out and stung me. I was like, oh. No. But I didn't put that in the video. I wasn't filming that anyways.
Yeah,
so then I came back a week later, like, so the second part, which is then with my good camera, checking out, that they're mostly dead, which turns out they weren't, stomping on them with like sandals.
Yeah.
Hey, before we wrap
up. So that was like, what, it's like, I did not know what good fortune I had to get stung by a wasp.
That was the best wasping ever.
You never know what's going to lead to
opportunity, right?
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Hey, before we wrap this up, Matthias, I want to ask you one last question. You got 3 kids. What do you, eventually there's probably going to be a time when they'll look back on kind of this enormous body of work that you've created on YouTube, and what do you want for them to get out of that? Do you want them to be kind of, like, damn, that was really cool, he made a lot of cool videos? Or are you more interested in like the things that you made, those actual, like your band saws and the actual projects that you made?
Well, it all depends on what they're going to be into, right?
Yeah.
So I think it will be cool for them to be able to look back at some of the stuff. But of course, also, we're in an era of digital cameras where people take way more photos than when we were kids. So, moments are not necessarily lost to to fading memories. So I hope they'll get into that sort of thing. But, the ages that they're at right now, they appreciate that, I can make stuff, but certainly they're not themselves necessarily aspiring to make stuff yet. So I'm not really giving that much thought in terms of, it will be this or it'll be that. It'll be what it'll be. And, like they make their own choices about what they find interesting.
It's a little bit early for any of us to know. YouTube is still pretty young, as far as like legacy channels and what that means in the future. And I don't know, it's something that I start to think about as people who have been on this for a long time. And by the way, you don't age. Over 12 years.
You know what? Perhaps that's the last question of this interview. How do you manage to avoid time and aging?
I get older.
It takes me a lot of work to keep it. You just naturally always look the same as you. I look at your old videos and I'm like, holy crap, he looks exactly the same. He hasn't aged a day.
Yeah, I was somehow maybe just not getting myself into too much stress. Yeah, I remember meeting up with a classmate. This is going back 10 years. He emails, hey, we both happen to live here. And it's like, you haven't changed a bit. And I'm like, yeah, why should I?
Well, this has been a huge treat for me to talk to you again and to catch up. And I'm really glad that you could be on our podcast with us and talk about YouTube.
Yeah, it's been fun.
Well, you are also welcome to come back whenever you want, and we can talk.
Oh,
more.
yeah. Sure.
I have a whole bunch of other questions.
And
definitely.
I've really been enjoying it. It's like, it's your podcast is one that's made for me. It's like by old time YouTubers for old time YouTubers.
It is.
That's what we were going for.
We're just the nostalgia train, We'll have to.
Unfortunately, that's a limited audience. There isn't that many old time.
That's
YouTubers.
right. We'll have you back. We'll have you back to talk about the 301 view counts.
Oh yeah, we can talk about a lot of the old 5-star. I was on a podcast yesterday and I brought up the 5-star rating system, and the person who was interviewing me was like, "Wow, that's even before me." I know that you would remember the 5-star rating system.
Oh yeah. And that YouTube, I think didn't it start as a dating site initially?
I believe originally, very long time ago.
I remember you guys talking about the friending. So I was like, oh yeah, YouTube friends. I never got that. And,
right.
yeah.
That's crazy. All right. Well, thanks again, Matthias. And everybody, thank you once again for listening to Chad and Steve Have a Podcast. And we'll talk to you next week.